so much long time.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a few weeks.
This here, my booty. Be a little shorter.
So we're not waiting for the video to come up.
It's online on Twitch, it's online on YouTube, and it's online on Facebook.
Not for me.
Just takes a minute.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Because the Facebook feed, I think, is like 17.
Here it is.
17 minutes behind.
Share.
17 seconds.
Share now.
It's maddening that with the new Facebook update, I can't just see our posts.
What posts?
I can't just see our Facebook, our posts. It only shows us like this dashboard thing where you see
right.
updates, news, friends, insights, about us. I just want to see just our posts that we're doing. That's all. That's all I want to do.
All right. Well, we're live. We're here now.
Yep, we're
It's
online.
been a while.
Let's see if anybody listens.
Sam Thompson's already on board.
Hey, all the way from Bose Angeles. How's
That's
it
right.
going in Bose Angeles?
Okay. For those of you that have watched Post-Orthodoxy before, we've been...
Where have we been?
We've been cocooning.
Cocooning.
Yes, we're settling into the ashes from which we will rise from the last our last incarnation.
Most recent being kicked out of some organization that we love.
Right. So we are currently working on a television show being filmed here in Butte. We took a little break from this as a concentrated effort and are looking forward to coming back after the end of the show, which is a week or two.
Yeah, December 2nd. We're not allowed to work past December 2nd.
Right. So after December 2nd, we are going to return to the effort. Last we left off, we had started a GoFundMe page.
Oh, really amazing, which did really, really well.
To raise the money for a home studio.
Mm-hmm.
Since the local social justice radio station decided to default on its mission. It's true. Look it up. So, look up KBMF controversy. I'm sure something should come up.
Oh my gosh, that would be funny, right?
So now we are working on setting up our home studio. We took a job to raise some extra money in addition to the generous support from folks who are fans of the show and supporting the effort. People who are into cognitive liberty and that kind of thing.
Thinking for yourself.
Whatever.
Expanding and growing rather than locking down.
Oh, that's what all the kids are doing these days. Anyway, so we're...
Gosh, I kind of missed you. Forever since we talked.
I know, we have a little moment. Before we have to run off to work. We have a late work day today, so we decided to take advantage of our time off to do some work for you.
Yes.
So we haven't been...
And especially because, thank the stars, we've managed to not break our commitment with KTUH.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So every week, even though we basically got too busy and tired, like 6 12-hour days a week to even still do our regular live stream, Dark and I have still managed to make our guest appearance with DJ Omni on KTUH every Sunday.
Honolulu, yeah.
In Honolulu, it's a radio station as old as Dark is, and streaming to the entire island of Oahu, and we join...
And globally online.
You can listen at ktuh.org, and we join Evno every week.
Right now, we're in competition with Evno.
Right, because his show is technically
going on right now. He's interviewing some
usually Chris,
well-informed guests.
Chris is usually the guest right before us.
Right, about whatever the subject of the day is, and then we pop on. Because of the time crunch, we're not able to listen to Evno's show before we come on Evno's show. So he's doing his show as we're doing our show, and then there will be a cross for a half an hour.
Yep, and then we'll pack up and run away to work and be at work until 2 or 3 in the morning. Or maybe not past 2 because we can only work 12 hours.
That's right.
My goal is when we come back from this, when we're done with the film and we're getting our studio set up and we're setting up our regular stream schedule, my goal is to listen to Evno's show, Know Thyself, on KTUH, which starts streaming at
10
9 a.m. Hawaii time.
10 o'clock Hawaii time, I think. Maybe 10:30.
I think it's 9:30.
I don't know.
Anyway, listen to the beginning of the show.
It's a 3-hour show.
Start our live stream at the point of our interview on KTUH with Evno, and use that topic as a launch pad for the rest of our live stream after our time with Evno on KTUH.
Right.
And then also have other live streams during the week on other topics.
Right, so that's what we're working on. Where are we on the fundraiser, by the way?
The fundraiser is at 3,700 out of 5,000.
That's great.
Yeah, we just had DJ Savage donated another $100 a couple days ago, and an anonymous donation earlier last week.
Well, we
another $100.
Sassafras.
Sassafras donated $100.
Yeah.
Think what you will.
Yeah.
She's not a sex worker.
No, not even a human.
Not even human. Yeah. So we're really grateful to everybody who's hanging with us while we take a brief break to make some money and get to know what's going on in the film industry here in Montana.
We just figured we'd give it a few weeks for the virus to be over and let that things get back to normal.
And then come back. Oh, but it's not.
No.
Actually, Karen Sullivan and the Butte Silverbow Health Department have handed down some more mandates recently.
Well, is that
it's very recent.
in line with the governor's mandates, or are these separate here in Butte? Do you know?
I actually haven't read Steve Bullock's mandates, but Jim with ButteNews.net.
Yes.
I can't remember his last name.
Larson.
Jim Larson with ButteNews.net forwarded me the video that ButteNews.net put together about, which was just a video of Karen Sullivan talking about the new mandates, and I'm going to share that link with our viewers.
Great.
Because it was a good video. It was it's the sort of thing where I think maybe if you read these mandates, they seem very professional, but watching, I don't know Karen Sullivan, but watching her talk about these things and talk about the virus, as someone who's been studying the virus in depth for almost a year now, it made me feel a little uncomfortable because she was mixing words and terms and statistics.
Really?
Yeah. As a citizen who's being affected by this person's choices,
You want to feel confident.
I want to feel confident that they know more about the virus than I do.
Right. Did
And
you feel that
I
confidence?
didn't feel that way.
I haven't watched it yet, so.
Yeah, it was a little disturbing and confusing. So what's going on in Butte right now is a couple of elderly care facilities, or what do they call them? Legacy residents is what Butte Silverbow calls them. A couple of legacy residential homes have had a sweep of coronavirus go through them, and we have experienced 20 deaths in Butte.
In Silverbow County.
Total.
Since.
Total.
Total of 20 deaths.
Yeah,
Okay.
but unfortunately a lot of those just happened recently in these legacy residential homes, and because of that and because of a spike in positive PCR tests indicative of a widespread coronavirus infection, Butte Silverbow has said that all businesses have to go back to 50% capacity. There's no alcohol service after 10 p.m. and businesses will be fined heavily if there's anybody in the building after 10 p.m.
Wow.
So we were recently at a restaurant because we work really long hours and don't have time to cook for ourselves. So we stay within our art pod and we only visit with our art department people, but sometimes the 6 or 8 of us will go eat in a back room somewhere away from all the rest of the customers.
Right.
And our server told us that she'd had health department just randomly check her restaurant 3 times that week already.
No, yesterday.
All in one day.
The health department had stopped in 3 times in one day.
Okay. So it's affecting everybody differently. The Hummingbird Cafe has decided to go back to takeout only. They were originally going to go back to takeout only on December 1st, which was confusing for me because if cases are spiking now, why wait 12 days to do it? But they've recently changed that so that they're back to takeout only as of today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then Salancha has
Local pub.
had a local much beloved pub has closed indefinitely.
Right.
Max Tavern was closed briefly because one of their chefs had a positive test, And so they closed down and quarantined everybody and opened back up again when it was safe.
Okay.
And they're back opening and serving food, and lots of places have put these plastic barriers between the booths to make sure that your little pod stays with your little pod. And
Right.
there's an order now. We're back to only being able to seat 6 people at a table. I guess unless you're a family with a lot of kids, because I mean, like our art department team, we get COVID tested 3 times a week and only socialize with each other, but I'm having problems getting them to put us all at a table together, which there are 8 of us.
Right.
So those are some things that have changed, and it's recently affected a string of businesses here in Butte quite detrimentally. The Party Palace and the 3 other bars owned by Ted and Julie Deschner are closing.
5 bars in total, I think.
According to their statistics, 24 people out of work just like that. He said because of the fines being imposed upon businesses and the regulations that need to be imposed in order to make the business safe, they can't afford to keep running them. And on top of that, he's been told by the health department as the owner of these bars, that if anybody else in his bar is caught without a mask on while not drinking, or caught not 6 feet away from another customer while drinking, then Ted will go to jail.
He said 6 months.
Yeah. So I don't know how other bar owners are being treated by Butte Silverbow Health Department, but I haven't heard of any of my other bar owner friends, and we have several, being told that if one of their patrons is caught not 6 feet away from another patron, that the bar owner will go to jail. I'm thinking of, like the Ackermans at the 51 Below,
yeah.
or some of these smaller bars where it's often difficult to regulate how your customers behave, even if you are at 50% capacity and you are trying to keep people in their pods.
Well, I think this is where it gets very local. And at this point, it's not necessarily about, as we've learned from the WHO, as we announced several weeks ago, said that lockdowns don't slow the spread of the virus.
Right.
And that they actually are, it's proving to be more damaging.
No, lockdowns don't change how many people will eventually die from the virus.
Okay.
Because we are slowing the spread. We've managed to slow the spread all year
it has,
to the point
seems
that
to have no effect on the overall, right?
Now we're hitting flu season,
right?
And a bunch of people are just now encountering this virus when our vitamin D levels are depleted, the oxygen levels are depleted, the pollution is high because trees have shut down for the year.
Right. PM2 levels go up.
Pollution levels go up. So we've rather than being a mom who takes your kid to go get chicken pox at the start of the summer while they're young enough to handle it, we've put off getting chicken pox so long that we're now in a really vulnerable space, and a bunch of people haven't got the chicken pox yet. So we've slowed the spread, but was that the right thing to do?
This is what makes the issue so confusing for so many people. The thing that I find most frustrating around this issue is the lack of clear, definitive information from a non-biased source. That's the difficult thing that we're having. I find a bunch of smaller independent sources that I have gone to that have had offered different perspectives. I've been following other narratives around like the PCR test, what it is, what it does, and what do rising numbers mean.
Right.
What do rising case numbers mean? These are things that we're not asking as a society. We're just saying, oh my God, the case numbers are going up.
Right.
And that's a terrible thing because eventually some more people will die. And this is what happens when viruses go around. Not to be callous, but that is what happens when viruses go around.
I think maybe people were hoping that if we just all really did shut the planet down and stay home, then we would save the vulnerable people from dying by keeping everyone inside until there was a vaccine. Like with polio, but 50 years faster than it took them to get the polio vaccine. One
of the phenomena that we've talked about often on the show, is the rise of QAnon. And QAnon is a sub-event related to the rise of magical thinking. and magical thinking has come as sort of seeing a resurgence because we've lost trusted authorities, and our governmental authorities, our religious authorities. There's a lot of people that we used to go to. So CDC and WHO would be a standard authority that people would go to. They have not proven to be a reliable source on a number of levels. And there are reasons for that, which we can go into in another show when we have more time.
A full breakdown of the CDC.
But when the CDC says don't wear masks, masks do not protect you or anybody else, and then also they do. When the CDC is saying this, it doesn't matter if new data has come in that they validate that with. People, because of the internet, can Google anything they want and find an answer for what they want from authoritative sources, which is problematic. And because of that, there is a sort of rise towards magical thinking of things that feel good in my gut.
Right. It feels good to me, or it sounds like stuff that I already know, therefore I feel like it's probably more true.
Or it feeds my bias, that I'm looking to confirm my bias.
I want to know that the things I think are true, so I'm going to like data that proves me more than perhaps the best data.
Right. So it's unfortunate that we can't have intelligent debates on an important issue because there's a lot of magical thinking going on in our political realm as well. We just spent I think most of my friends are bedraggled from the last 4 years. We had a 4-year election cycle.
Yeah, politics for 4 years.
Straight 4 years around politics.
It's some people's favorite thing to talk about still.
And what came out of what is traditionally been called the left is excitement that what they don't want has been thwarted. But there has been no push towards what they want.
Excitement that we have achieved something that was a goal.
Which is not something. Trump.
No, like a new goal. We should have a new goal.
A new goal
not that goal.
Maybe hold people accountable for what they say they're going to do when they go in office. But even if they do that with our current president-elect, it won't matter because he's basically it's Republican policies. These are the policies that Democrats have been fighting forever.
The president-elect's policies.
They brought in Biden as opposed to Trump, which means they brought in a far-right political agenda into the office. And people said, we just have to do this now, and now we have to hold him accountable when he comes in to uphold democratic values. I'm not seeing a lot of that because he's not in office yet, but it seems like the rhetoric now should be towards what is the vision we want to have for ourselves as a country.
Now that we have not Trump, what is President Biden going to actually do?
What is Biden aside from not Trump?
Yes.
This is a discussion I think we should all be having.
What will he give to the citizens?
So the combination of that political trauma with this roller coaster ride that we've been on with the virus, because it seems like there should be enough data at this point to understand the effects, the cost-benefit analysis. And when I say cost-benefit, I'm talking about cost to humans in suffering, in life, in treasure. All those things. The cost-benefit analysis of our policies in terms of lockdown policies, education policies.
This is something we normally do before a pandemic, but before calling a lockdown, I should say, that was not done this time. They didn't, I guess maybe the heads that be sat down in a room and were like, is it really worth it to shut everything down? And we have to hope that the people that made those decisions have the best interest at heart of all the civilians.
I don't know if that's the case.
But we definitely didn't hear about it in all the constant ongoing conversations around lockdowns and school closures and business closures, whether or not anyone ever looked into the amount of businesses that are never going to come back to Butte that will just be provided by, those holes will just be provided by Walmart from now on.
We know right now that the rich have gotten richer.
Oh yeah,
the rich have not suffered
billions
in this.
Yeah.
The regular folks have suffered greatly. We know that that is part of the cost-benefit analysis, is the rich have become tremendously richer. The people, the proletariat, regular small business owners, regular folks have suffered greatly and are still defending the policies
Mm-hmm.
that are causing them to suffer and causing the oligarchs to become more powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and still not finding the information that shows that this is the case. I find it baffling. And I feel like as we go forward, there are data points out there that we could be looking towards to see the effects of the actions that are being taken.
Yes.
The problem with the magical thinking is that we in our trauma, our amygdalas have been hijacked, and we've moved into areas of tribalism and partisanship where we can't even rethink our own stances at the risk of being ostracized from our friends group, our
community.
family, and our community. We have experienced this with the radio station because we were looking at data that was not in line with the political zeitgeist
of
KBMF. We were, and there's other reasons, but we did not do anything incorrect. We broke no FCC law. We broke no radio station law. We broke no mandates by the Butte America Foundation, but we're still terminated because of intense tribalism and people's inability to actually look at data that is emerging. When people say, listen to the science, science is not an answer, it's a question. The science is constantly changing. Instead of doing that, they said, you're violating the rules, the unspoken and unwritten rules of the tribe.
Right. Don't
question authority. Somehow the social justice radio station said, don't question authority.
Yes.
The authorities that have proven to be incorrect over and over and over. I find that completely disturbing. And this is not some big corporate, it's not a corporate radio station with corporate backers that shut it down. It was just done with small personalities in a small town with a tribalized identity that decided that we were no longer in the tribe for no good reason.
Well, a couple people decided we were no longer in the tribe, and now the other 70 people who were our friends think that we were kicked out for good reason because were lied to.
They were lied to. So I use this as a microcosm to talk about the problem of one or two people making policies that change the programming on a public access station, and the rest of the people let it happen. People wonder how Trump could become president, how things can happen on the national scale. It happened in a microcosm here. 2 or 3 people who did not like us changed policy, took us off a public access station, and everybody else said, well, the authorities did it, so I guess it was, there must be a good reason. There was no good reason.
We didn't break any rules. And this brings me back to the Party Palace and the other businesses owned by Ted and Julie Deschner. I have worked with Ted Deschner's son briefly a couple years ago, Ted Jr., on a film that we never quite got off the ground with it. And I'd only ever really heard things about Ted Deschner. I worked with Ted Deschner himself extremely briefly when I was playing the rock star music for a boxing match at the Civic Center a couple years ago.
He just ran for chief executive of Butte Silverbow. He's a public figure.
So I hardly knew him at all. We've had the occasion to have a couple of conversations with him recently just about other business, and then to see posts on Facebook about the Party Palace shutting down forever, and the other 3 businesses that he owns and all his employees are suddenly, I guess, hopefully now on unemployment. Which really just doesn't cover your ass for bills. But I think one of the posts that he made is that his 4 businesses paid over $250,000 a year in payroll to the 24 employees that he employed. He and Julie also do a yearly candy drive for thousands of Butte children. And they feed a giant Thanksgiving. They normally would feed a giant Thanksgiving dinner to a bunch of people who don't have families to have Thanksgiving with. So I've seen both sides of the story with Ted. I know a lot of people.
Some people say he provides a drunk limousine, so people are not drunk driving in our town, and he gets people who have had too much to drink home safely. Other people say he's enabling alcoholism by picking up drug people from home to go spend money at his bar. It's
Yeah.
not a black and white issue.
It's not a black and white issue, but people are very polarized on Ted and Judy Dashner. They either love the shit out of them or hate their guts. And I only see both kinds of posts. I have not yet met a person who doesn't have an opinion about Ted Dashner.
Right. So it seems like the issue that is happening is getting lost in small town identity politics.
Yeah, because I haven't heard about the Ackermans being warned that they'll go to jail for 6 months if one of their guests at 51 Below isn't within 6 feet of another guest. I haven't heard of any other bar being told that the owner will go to jail. And now I know that Ted staged a pretty vocal protest the first time that they cut hours back to 12 a.m.
Well, that's what people say. Well, he didn't obey the rules, and so now he's going to pay the price.
Yeah.
And this is the discussion.
And when you're on the outside.
Right. We need to talk about the rules a little bit. And that's the thing. As long as you say, well, they didn't obey, that's why we got terminated, or we're supported. People supported our termination.
Because they think we didn't obey the rules.
We didn't obey the rules.
Yeah.
Which
Most people don't know what happened. They just heard a story from the people who kicked us out they're like, well, but you broke the rules. Well, but you broke the rules. And we're like, no, we actually didn't break any rules. And we weren't disrespectful. But the story is that we broke KBMF rules and were very disrespectful. And that's why we got kicked out.
But because of identity politics, people will just say, well, the authorities did it.
Yeah, and I also didn't like what you were saying, so it's okay.
So it's fine. It's letting that stuff slide is why we're in the situation that we're in politically and socially in this country. People allow things, and we talked about this months ago on the show, when we allowed the drug war to start, we allowed a race war and a class war to ramp up. Because I don't do drugs, we'll just fudge the Constitution and people's freedoms.
Suddenly what you do with your body sends you to jail.
And as long as I'm not doing it, well, it's not no skin off my back, and it affects those people I'm not that fond of. So that's the slide. That was a major crossroads in American history.
A massive race and class war snuck in behind a war on drugs.
But it happens every step of the way.
Yeah.
Us getting terminated from the radio station and people not holding the radio station accountable has degraded the radio station.
And it will continue to slide down. Right now, DJs are still allowed to talk about marijuana and mushrooms and politics and social change on KBMF, as long as they're talking about it in ways that the general populace of KBMF likes, and as long as the board president doesn't hate them.
I'm calling a little bit early so I can work out our audio problems with our little setup here.
Yeah, we have a new speaker because we're in a different location today.
We do have a studio coming. Hi, is Edno there? Hello?
What happened?
Somebody answered, it wasn't Edno.
And they hung up?
And then they hung up, yeah.
Oh, weird.
Let's try it again.
The parallel here is that Ted Dashner...
Oh, wait.
What? Are you calling the wrong number?
I called KBMF. Yeah. Let's just try that again.
Oh, my God.
KTUH, let's try that.
So whose voice was it?
I don't know. He hung up on me. Whoever's DJing right now.
Whoever's the DJ.
It's probably, I don't know who it is.
I'm going to find out right now.
It's probably Michael doing a show.
No, Michael's show ended at noon. It would normally be Nora. The Noracle at this time. We love KBMF. We want KBMF to thrive. We would love to participate with KBMF. And us talking about things that the leadership of KBMF are messing up is not us hating on KBMF. We care about the ongoing health of the radio station.
Hi there, Edno. We're calling in a little early so you can put me on hold so I can work out our audio anomalies.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we'll be here. Thank you.
That's pretty funny, baby.
Yeah. Okay, we're live.
On KTUH?
On KTUH. No, we're not live. We can hear us being on hold.
It is 1:30.
Can he hear us this way? How does it work?
Usually, that's what we do. We always plug it in like this, just with a different speaker.
All right, let's see how it goes. All right, we're about to go live on Evno's show, Know Thyself, on KTUH in Honolulu. We'll be doing a half-hour segment, and then we'll have to wrap this up and skedaddle out the door to go back to work.
It's such a short conversation. I had so many more things that I wanted to talk about with what's going on with the Deschners and why they're being treated differently than other bar owners are being treated. And how is it not personal?
How can you have this discussion in a way that puts aside previous prejudices?
All right, so that was a little bit of roof creation, although that was a poor recording.
No.
Right now, I am pleased to have Doug Sevier and Ansley Sevier on the line, hosts of the Post-Orthodoxy podcast. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Evno.
Thanks for having us on the air. Can you hear us there?
We can hear you.
Oh, very good. Thanks for having us on the show. Now, what's the topic for the show today?
Well, today we are looking at aspects of the creative process, and instead of regurgitating all of the constant drivel that the media tends to put on us, how to create our own thoughts, our own visions, and manifest them in the world. And I've actually been really interested in talking to you about this as an artist of various forms, and I know you guys are currently co-creating many things, but I wanted to hear from you what your process is in creating some of the works that you do. And for those that don't know, Dark creates kinetic sculptures, among other things. He's also created many types of visually pleasing planters and things that will last on in places long after he's gone. So, I don't know how to categorize what you do, but I'm interested in the process with which you do it.
Yeah, how do you categorize what you do, darling?
Yes, that's the question that I always like to avoid.
Well, but you have this term, cultural composting.
So I'm not asking you to categorize it.
Right.
How do you get into the process of having a vision and then making sure all of the parts work together and all of the resources come together to create these things that spin in ways people have no idea that was possible?
Well, I am I guess a street artist, a gonzo artist, a self-taught artist. I dropped out of college after the first year in order just to pursue the things that I wanted to do, which ended up being in the arts, performance arts, graphic arts, stage arts, all kinds of written. I've sort of worked my way through a lot of different mediums as a compulsion. So I would say that first off, I do my work not because I have some vision that I want to see to completion. My work is really my medication. If I don't check out periodically and go into, I guess, what they call the zone, sitting down with objects and making new things occur, I am not a healthy person unless I do that to some capacity periodically. There is a term that I've become fond of that I call cultural composting, which is when we find ourselves in this, what I feel like is a culture in rapid transition because of new technologies. We don't have a static culture, we have a culture of transition. And so there are things that come up and go away very quickly. And when I lived in Hawaii, I built a landscape nursery on a junkyard and found things in the soil that ended up becoming artwork later on. And as I was composting tree mulch into fertilizer, I realized that a lot of our cultural BS could be distilled down into some kind of cultural compost from which new things can come. So I think that's probably one thing that I look at a lot in my work is the things that have been cast aside and how can they be added to other things that have been cast aside to create novel creations, novel outcomes that had not been anticipated. And so that happens on a literary level, a physical level. The most obvious is taking things out of the junkyard and then moving them into an art gallery. But there's other levels to that in terms of how do we, Post-Orthodoxy is a show about looking at dogmas after they serve their usefulness and how to maybe learn what came out of them and learn how to make newer things come out of them versus being locked down into some calcified idea.
Tradition, tradition, tradition. Our listener here on our live stream today, Evno Sam, he says, an artist is anyone not afraid to publicly reveal their very personal perspective of the world.
Right. And I'm definitely aware of that, but and thank you for that explanation, Doug. I think for many artists, it is just that it is almost a drive to create and process as much as it is seeing anything out there. And I will say that although you're proud of your work, you also seem to have a sense of non-attachment to it and be on to the next thing and what you're creating next most of the time.
Well, I think that's part necessary. When I did stand-up comedy in my 20s, I felt that the traditional role of the comedian is to hold up a funhouse mirror back to the public so that people can see themselves distorted just enough that they can laugh at themselves. But what is also being delivered is a true image in there somewhere, some reflection of themselves, distorting it enough where people can laugh at something they hadn't laughed at before.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, as an artist, part of what I'm doing is reflecting the culture back to itself. And in order to do that, you have to somehow be outside of that culture. You have to be detached from that culture in order to doctor the culture or to help co-create the culture. You have to also be separate from it, which is, it's not easy for regular folks to do when they're not involved in the creative process, but they're more involved in the consumption process or the belonging process of being a part of something and wanting to know that the thing that they're a part of is something worth being a part of. And often being invested in that way makes it difficult to create, to critique the thing that you're a part of. So I feel like my favorite artists are the ones that have held up the funhouse mirror. They're the ones that have shown us ourselves in a way that makes us uncomfortable, but does it in a way that we can take it. And that's either through humor or beauty.
Right. Or it's simple absurdity. I know you're
Yes.
a fan of the Dada method as well. But my next curiosity is going to be, because of the motion, because of this constant need to create. Have you ever found yourself in a slump where you're not sure what to do next? And how have you found a way to get past that?
I think that's a part of the process.
Is he talking about writer's block?
Writer's block is a thing. Creative block is a thing. Part of me feels like that is a necessary part of the process. The field needs to go fallow periodically to replenish itself. And I feel like I have gone into serious bouts of depression throughout my life that, while painful and debilitating, also connected me to so many people around me who are also going through the same thing without the means to understand why they're going through it. They don't understand it's a part of the process. So I feel like there are seasons.
We've been taught largely to resist any pain or discomfort rather than seeing and experiencing pain and discomfort as a necessary part of the cycle, that the waves have to go out to come in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I used a metaphor when I went to Standing Rock. And if you're familiar with the Standing Rock story, I think it's one of those amazing stories from this early part of this new century, where a very obscure part of the country that somehow became the focus of the world through a movement. And the movement was not necessarily an environmental movement. It was as the Standing Rock people would say, it was a spiritual movement. And there is no separation between spiritual and environmental. And the movement went from a stance to a movement where people from all over came in. And then it had to end because they were in a floodplain. And when the winter came, it was not a place to camp for winter. So it had a automatic timeline. But there were narratives around the rise and fall of Standing Rock. And a lot of people were upset to see the event end when it had to end because of where it was located. And so I like to use the metaphor of there's the tree flowers, and that's beautiful, and people are sad because the flower leaves, but the flower has to leave for the fruit to then grow. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way I look at it. Whenever depression hits me or I start to lose my faith in the human endeavor, I look at that as the petals falling, and that the fruit doesn't just magically appear. There is nurturing and growth that is required for that fruit to then mature. And they don't just happen automatically. We live in a instant gratification culture, and I think we've gotten separated from these natural processes that don't separate themselves from us. We just get confused about what's going on around us. And I think when we start getting more tuned in to natural processes like seasons, which it's easy in some places to be desensitized to the season when you don't have to deal, when you have internal heating, forced air heating, you can forget that you live in a hostile environment that can kill you if something goes wrong suddenly, like a power outage. So I think it's important to be aware of the processes that we're in and not resist the process, but try to learn from the processes that occur. And that may sound passive and not as solar and American as we should be, but I identify more with a process-oriented thing than a result-oriented reality. And so that's just my perspective.
And that seems to be very in accord with Taoist beliefs, right? Going with the Tao, with the flow of nature, instead of trying to overcome it or impose one's will on it. You know, I know that here in Hawaii, surfers are the same way, because you're not going to change the shape of the wave. No. All you can do is ride it and decide how you're going to deal with it in the best way. And so I definitely appreciate those explanations, and I agree that most of, certainly this society, has lost the patience, and some of that has been being established, you know, since fast food was invented. On the other hand, you know, certainly our intellectual and mental stimulations of having the world, you know, the internet is often termed as the world, all the world's information, but it is also all the world's schlock.
Yes.
And everything else. And so having those instant dopamine hits and instant communication with any idea you could want, whether it is positive or negative, has definitely, at least for me, and I'm sure for some others, brought us away from the patience of being in the moment and observing what the flow of time can be. And I really appreciated the way you explained how that fallow and the blocks, as they were called, are part of the creative process. And I've found similar things in writing.
Evno, do you feel like you know where in U.S. society we decided that it would be better if we did not have pain? There it used to be a part of life. It used to be understood that sometimes there was pain and sometimes there were fallow times, a much more natural flow and seasons. And then at some point and I don't know when, but we as a society started getting told that we should just alleviate all suffering, and that's what happiness is.
I don't know that alleviating all pain is really, and there, for me, most of the time when I see it, certainly in a medical sense, and once again, the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of KTUH's licensees, management, or staff. It's wanting to treat the pain because they don't want to pay enough attention to the underlying causes. And I think that deeper reflection, of okay, well, what is the lifestyle, right? What types of food are people eating? What types of environment are they in? Are we willing to address those issues that may be causing the pain? And it's like, no, but we have this pill that can get rid of the pain, so the issues aren't really issues anyway.
Well, and oftentimes people they don't have the power to change the things that are causing them pain or suffering. Elderly people, or kids stuck in abusive homes, or people stuck in abusive jobs or relationships. And so medicating the pain sometimes seems like the only way to get through something that you feel like you have no power to change for the better.
I think I can answer where we started to become that way. While we're talking to you on the radio, we are also currently live streaming on Facebook as an impromptu Post-Orthodoxy show. And in the comment section, I'm going to provide a link, but I'll also tell your listening audience, there's a documentary by a British cat named Adam Curtis called The Century of Self. And I would say we really started to get separated with the advent of Edward Bernays, who was Sigmund Freud's nephew, took Sigmund Freud's theory of the unconscious when it came out and defined American society with it through politics, advertising, business, and psychology, all combined into one, which was basically a wizard speaking with technology that the regular folks didn't have, and manipulated technology with this new people with this new technology. And if you've never seen Century of Self, it is available on YouTube. It's a 4-part series or 3-part series, hour-long episodes. And it's, I think, a pretty brilliant breakdown of how we started being manipulated through psychology for the first time in history on a mass scale.
Right. Well, I mean, psychology as it exists only existed the last century.
Exactly. Yes. I knew psychology.
Right. But before there are other theories of mind, I mean, others would argue that, the Catholic Church used quite significant methods of mind control for the better part of a millennia.
Yes.
And depending on how you look at it, some would say that is actually the history of humanity, that in one sense or another, people have been told what to think, and often, it hasn't been as more complicated than either believe what we tell you and do what we tell you, or, there are going to be moral consequences. But sometimes, there are entire belief systems built on why the hierarchical structure of society needs to remain that way. I think what you're pointing at and what Ainsley's pointing at is that in the States, it became through personal desire that you should want these things, right?
Yes.
That there's this sense of, I'll get mine and I don't care about others, that the competitive instant gratification notions of this society have fostered and exacerbated.
Well, it was the nexus of this new psychology and a new media.
And there were a lot of revivals going on at the time, and there was the Industrial Revolution at the time, so there were a lot of things were changing all over the planet, and we were reinventing. Darwin came along and was widely accepted religiously for a period of time, and then the church began to realize, I think, and I don't mean all Christians, I mean the kind of church people that are in power over manipulating people, that they were going to lose some of their power over people's fear of death as a manipulative token if they didn't squash Darwinism. And so there were massive revivals all over in the early 1900s, largely in response to evolution being accepted in the church for a portion of time. and broadening people's perspectives of humanity's place on the planet and what we should be doing as consumers, those sorts of things.
Right. And, that's still a discussion that's happening to this day. As well as, you have those that actually, and I'm sure both of you are familiar with this, that actively trying to work towards end times on this planet.
Yes. Just before we went on the air with you, I briefly, in our previous part of the show, we're talking about the rise of magical thinking as systems of authority are being discredited through their own actions or through outward manipulation, that there's a rise of magical thinking where everything is relative, everybody gets to have an opinion, everybody gets to say whatever they want because they can, and
every idea has the same weight.
Every idea has the same weight, and so you get the rise of something like QAnon. To me, is a result of this rise of magical thinking, where you can't have your ideas vetted because nobody else is having their ideas vetted, therefore I get to do whatever I want, which is causing a massive breakdown. And I think that we're seeing, we focused on the rise of QAnon a lot on our show because we focus on cult behavior, and it's very easy to see the cult-like behavior in a non-centralized way. So there is some Q guy doing the whole thing, but it's a plug and play where anybody can jump into QAnon,
join the treasure hunt,
and put together their pieces of information and think that they've got the new answer or they know how things are going, and it allows people to follow their own magical thinking in a larger zeitgeist. So everybody gets to play.
A sense of belonging.
And I think
the simulation has become less coherent, is basically what you're saying. That different people are experiencing it and projecting it in different ways. So
I'm not sure how that plays out.
We're about to find out.
I think we are. When the authority breaks down.
The process. This is exactly the process you were talking about. These are the seasons, and we've never been through one quite like this before, so we're going to find out what happens next. Speaking of which, we've only got a couple minutes left, so I wanted to ask you guys, instead of reflecting that kind of noise, which I know you do to bring people to analysis, instead, we know you're working on a lot of projects, and you often find the projects that come to you, but is there anything in specific that you guys are working on creating that you would like to let us know about at this moment?
When Dark first told me what the topic for today was going to be, possibly power of manifesting, or manifesting your reality, or manifesting your desires, or whatever, the first thing that came to my mind, and it's something that I've been, I guess, working on or meditating on or allowing into my realm for the past few years, is this thought that I don't know that people so much become better at manifesting as they become less resistant to what is happening and is going to happen anyway. And when we remove resistance, we alleviate suffering and can receive whatever is going to happen with more joy and more enjoyment.
Yeah, and I would go back to your surfing metaphor. You just gotta paddle out. You're not going to catch a wave if you don't paddle out. There is volition in that, and there is the exertion of your own passion and power to paddle out, and skills that are developed through attempting some waves too big, or sitting on a flat ocean for a long time. It is a co-creative. I still see my life as co-creative. I am not imposing my reality on the world, but I am looking at what's happening in my environment and trying to work with my environment, with cultural changes, weather changes, psychological changes, my own personal growth as an individual, shedding things that no longer serve me.
I think it's really ancient. I think, and I know this isn't technically what you asked, Evno, but I think this kind of thinking is very ancient. It makes you think of Feng Shui or Tai Chi. It makes you think of ley lines and magic spelled with a K. You don't go into nature and force nature to do what you want. You go into nature and you find the ley lines and you find the right plant and you ask for things in the right way with the right words when the moon is in the right place in the sky.
Yeah.
Like
Right, but even then, you know, it's not even necessarily what you want, but at some level, okay, how do I assist in this process? Right. Unfortunately, we are out of time right now. Thank you guys so much for joining us once again. You can find Dark and Ainsley at Post-Orthodoxy, that is on Facebook and a bunch of other mediums.
If you find our Post-Orthodoxy page on Facebook, it shows you everywhere else we are. So thanks for having us on your show, and aloha to all the listeners there on Oahu.
There you go. Well, thank you again, Dark and Ainsley, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again next week. Once again, the opinions and views heard here are not necessarily those of KTUH's licensees, management, nor staff. Coming at you right now, this is Paul Isaacs featuring Tubby Love with Creators.
All right, we gotta cut that out.
oh yeah, we can't have copyrighted music.
We can't play copyrighted music, so we're off the air. But thanks for having us on, and we'll talk to you next week. All right, cheers. All right, we have to wrap up our show.
We have to go. I have to go put on work clothes. We have to get all of our battery chargers and our gear. I have to order pizzas.
Yeah, thanks
We got a lot of stuff going on today.
Thanks for the surprise, participating in the
It's
surprise.
not pizzas for us, it's pizzas for the heroine.
Right.
Yeah.
Which probably won't get eaten.
No, it's a major part of the scene, actually.
Oh, really?
And I have to tell them specifically, don't cut the pizzas. Because it's in the scene that the two heroines sit at a coffee table and tear the pizza by hand and eat it. It's very gruesome.
Very good.
It's a murder show, so.
Thanks for participating in our Post-Orthodoxy pop-up broadcast.
Pop-up show!
We'll be back on a regular schedule soon. Thanks for waiting out our fallow period for Post-Orthodoxy.
Like a field waiting a new harvest, it has to not be growing things for a while in order for the soil to replenish.
That's right. We'll be back soon.
Cheers to Sam and Cassie for commenting today. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, cheers and aloha.
Have a good Sunday!